Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to a man who, for the first time in many years, for me at least, I'm talking to somebody in the future. Now he's sitting at Hawke's Bay in New Zealand. He's just telling me before we press record that he's just spent some time at the Australian Open. He's originally from the UK, but he's residing in New Zealand, and he spends a lot of time in Australia. Mr. St John Craner, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Darren, mate. Nice to be here. Lovely to be here.
It's you were just telling me about your escapades and how you got so many clients here, and you do deals with lots of organizations across the world and run lots of coaching for ag sales.
Yep.
You're the managing director of, I'll get this right, Agrarian Rural
Agrarian.
Marketing.
So yeah, Agrarian. So I've not only got a really unfortunate first name, but I thought just to make it even harder, I'd just call my company an even weirder name. So yeah, so Agrarian is, the advancement of agricultural interest. So an agrarian economy. New Zealand's an agrarian economy, Aussie's up there as well. So, we export a lot of our goods, our food, our fiber. So the more colloquial, I have a business called Rural Sales Success, and I train rural sales teams, but also sales managers, because if we get the manager right, the team goes right.
Funny about that, and we'll talk about that today. So you do specialize in the rural space, but I guess the stuff we're going to talk about has equal applicability when you're selling widgets,
Yep.
cars, telecommunications,
FMCG,
IT services,
pharmaceutical,
the whole
medical,
lot.
all the same. Yep.
You're also an author. You've got a newly released book and another one coming out shortly, which we'll get to
Yep.
plug at the end. And you're
Sure.
also a podcast host as well. So,
Yeah.
mate, you are doing everything. Where did it start for you, though, St John? Where did it start for you that's led you to now do the work that you do in the
Sure.
space that you operate?
Yeah. I was down at Lincoln Uni, which is the equivalent of your Charles Sturt or your Marcus Oldham.
Hmm.
And I was doing like a mini masters. It's called a Kellogg, which is just below a Nuffield for any agricultural people. So because I was on a farm, I don't get sent for 8 weeks to different farms all around the Netherlands and everywhere, which my wife would have been delighted with. I don't know, it depends which day you talk to her. But so I did a Kellogg program, and I had a very lonely day on day three, or an epiphany. And they said, so we do a 9 day residential, and it's like a half an MBA thing. They said, who leads you? What leadership you got around you? And it was quite a sad moment for me. And I'm not a sad guy. And I was like, I've got any bloody leadership around me. And I was working for a rural marketing agency at the time. They're really good at what they did, but I wasn't learning anything. And I was on the old
Mm.
golden handcuffs. I was a good sales guy. I was their business development guy. I ran farming panels. I was their planning director with all the sort of swanky job titles and a bit of salary to go with it. And I was earning a small fortune in a little provincial town. And, I was half good at what I did. And I was like, I'm not learning anything new. I need to do my own thing. So I started my own business, and
Hmm.
we had three kids, all very young, eye-watering mortgage, and spent the first week in the local library using their free Wi-Fi before I managed to find a crummy little desk with a mate around the back of a like potting ceramic place or whatever it was. So that was about, I don't know. Yeah, that would have been 9 years ago in April. So yeah.
Wow. And what was it that prompted you to do that? Was it the fact that you didn't have leadership around you, or didn't see
Yep.
a
Yep.
track in front?
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I've always put a huge value on learning. And they always say it's only a principle is only a principle when it costs you money. And this one cost me money because I dropped from a very, very big salary to a not a very big. I went from a skyscraper to a bungalow, and I tried not to break any limbs in between. But it was pretty big jump. And we started small, and we chewed like hell, and then we picked up a couple of clients, and then I just really committed to getting good at sales and sales psychology and human behavior and heuristics and biases and all the things we can get into, all
Yeah.
those sort of crazy complicated words. But the guts of it is, just got very, very fascinated around psychology and curiosity and all those things. And I said, I'm going to get really, really good at it. I want to be world class at it. And so I've never stopped since.
And from what you've been telling me just before we press record, you've surrounded yourself with some pretty incredible people as well that has enabled you to fast track that development.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's the one that really, really stands. I almost live by is Warren Buffett. He says, "The more you learn, the more you earn."
Mm,
And I've lived by that, and I've actually put my money where my mouth is. So some of my best students, Darren, are people that pay for their own training.
yeah.
And so, we were facetious on we were having a bit of banter before the record party. And you said, St. John, you would have been there with some swanky big client sitting there in Margaret Court or Barrelay and, slurping away. It's like, no, I paid my own way there, completely paid my
Yeah.
own way. I've always paid my own way. So I've never had like Silver Spoon or, Trustafarian or anything like that. I've had to
Mm,
like put every dollar back in. I put an enormous amount of money back into my own professional development and all these books behind you. This isn't a weird backdrop. There's more of them over here and over here. It's an absolute bloody mess. And I've always been a lifelong learner and I've always put a huge value on learning. And if I'm not learning, I'm not earning. So the thing is, you
mm,
can cap out. But if you continue investing in yourself and get the right people around you, and we'll talk about coaching in a minute, but you get a coach or you get a mentor or whatever you want to call it or training, and they can get you to a certain income level. And then it's like the players. I used to judge players. We're using a tennis metaphor, but some
yeah.
players change their coaches. Well, I know why they change their coaches now because the coach can get their game to this level, but then
Mm,
they want to go to the next level. They need to get another coach. So,
yeah.
that's what I've done. I've just put an emphasis on my lifelong learning and surrounding myself with really good people and getting advice from people who are at the level that I want to be at. But I
Yeah.
haven't shirked from that. It's cost me a lot of money. It's usually US dollars, which is frighteningly expensive from the old New Zealand peso or the Aussie dollar. They're both not dissimilar. But you've got to back yourself. And when you back yourself, it means you can bet on yourself and you trust yourself and you rely on yourself. So people that shirk from that or back away from that, I'm not judging you, but you've got to invest in yourself. I just wish everyone would sort of have a 1% personal development fund. It would only be
Yeah.
1% of your salary that you could put into
Yeah.
your own education and they'd be in such a better place.
It's interesting, isn't it? As you were talking, I'm just reflecting on the number of clients that I've been working with who literally have waited for their company to sponsor their professional development. And yet I've spoken to others who say, I'm not waiting for the company to do anything because I am responsible for my own development.
Love it.
And I'm going to actually step in and do this, whether the company ends up paying it or not.
Yep.
What do you see in, because you mentioned before that sometimes your best clients are the ones that pay for themselves.
100%.
Can you see the difference between the
Oh,
ones that take
huge.
self-leadership seriously versus the ones that perhaps don't?
You took the words right out of my mouth, mate. It's like my best students are the ones that pay for their own training because the more you pay, the more you pay attention.
Yeah.
So what happens is the higher the price, the higher they pay attention. So what they do is they're invested. So we have
Mm.
this thing, I get them to put it in blood, well, metaphorically in the Zoom calls. I say, we're going to honor the investment. So I get them to literally type the name and go, we're going to honor the investment. I said, what will honoring the investment look like? Most importantly, what would it not look like? If
Mm.
you weren't to honor this investment, honor your own investment. Turn up to the course. If you can't watch the recordings, download the things, use it, report back. We onboard people. We have different groups, different levels, all this kind of thing. And sometimes I don't hear hide or hear of them. And they're paying.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I used to really care, Darren, and I do care. But the thing is, my level of care, when it exceeds the level of care that they have for themselves, I stop caring.
Yes.
And that
Well, that's
sounds
it.
very, very mercenary, but it's like I'm invested in your potential and your development more than you are, even though
Yeah.
you're paying. Something's wrong here. Maybe you're not the students for us, and maybe you're best to, maybe find someone else or maybe stop paying.
It's actually fascinating because you could take the same approach to sales leadership
Mm.
and how many sales leaders get put into a sales leadership position because they've been a great individual contributor, and yet they end up now being the super sales rep, doing the deals, closing the sales, building the relationships, and they create I guess, an environment of codependency where the sales rep doesn't necessarily have to do the work. They're not as invested as the sales manager, and yet they clip the ticket.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you're talking about the transition, the leap from high performing rep that gets promoted to sales manager. And sometimes it's what we call the Peter principle, which some of your
Mm,
listeners might be familiar with, and you know it because you're nodding away. But usually you're basically promoted on tenure, not on talent.
yeah,
So if someone gets into a management role, it's just because they've been there for 15 years. But as Zig Ziglar says, you don't have 15 years experience, you have 1 year experience repeated 15 times. So people say, "Oh, yeah, I've got 10, 20 years experience." Like, no, you've probably got 2 or 3 years of experience repeated 10
yeah.
times or whatever the number is. So what I see with leaders, the first thing a leader needs to do, if we want to talk about that, is they need to learn how to lead themselves.
Mm.
And this codependency you spoke about is there's too many rescuers, the old
Mm.
victim triangle. And so
Yeah.
what they do is they go, hey, Darren, look, get out of the way, let me do this deal. And they come in like the white knight and pull a few strings because they're the big boss. And the
Yeah.
rep goes, F me, what's going on? I haven't got those levers. You don't allow me to do that. And so it's like when you talk to your kids, like don't swear and you swear. It's like you've got different rules. So it's like it doesn't work. So leaders, there's so much we can talk about leaders, but they've got to, the first thing I look in a leader, like I do in a sales rep, whatever industry, whatever sector is, are they self-aware?
Yeah.
Are they self-aware leaders? Because if you're attuned to yourself and tuned to yourself, you can tune into others. If you can read the
Mm.
room, you've got to be able to read yourself. So self-awareness is really good, but self-awareness comes from self-reflection. The problem
Yes.
is when you hold the mirror up to people like you and I, they don't like that reflection sometimes, but we have to force that reflection, and that's why we have coaches.
Mm. And that's exactly right. So talk to me about because you mentioned before, sales leaders have to obviously create a great environment for the sales team to thrive, but sometimes we can be guilty of wanting it more for our sales team or for our individuals than perhaps they do as well. As part of the self leadership, do you have some specific things that people can start to think about, whether it be reflection time, looking at that mirror?
Yeah.
What are some key things you're thinking about?
Yeah, great question. I would say, as we talked about leading yourself, I have a ladder of leadership, and I've just made that up on the spot, Darren. It just sounded really impressive, right? And phonetical. So it's
Put a
got a lovely
TM
mouth
on
of
that.
it.
That's trademark
I
now.
don't know, maybe, who knows? But most of this stuff I make up on the spot. No, it's not true. But roughly, you've got this leadership ladder. The first one is you need to self-reflect. So you need to make time. It could be journaling. It could be working with a buddy, an accountability partner. All bosses should have a boss. I always say that
Yeah.
refs have a ref. The ref has a ref. Who's refing the ref?
Mm.
That's a really nice analogy. So then you've got basically yourself reflect, and then you can self-coach. And then if you can self-coach, the next rung is you can be self-aware.
Mm.
So in order to master others, you need to master yourself, but you only do that by reflecting. And I
Yeah.
think that's through surrounding yourself with the right people that we spoke about, appointing your own personal board. And my personal board have a lot of dead people on them. They don't even know they're on my personal board, like Jim Rohn. There are some alive people like Dan Pink, Simon Sinek, Adam Grant. Yeah, big fans of those guys.
Yeah.
They're kind of advising me, and they're appointing my board. And I go and I spend a lot of time or buy their courses or read their books. But leading yourself comes from self-awareness, but you're not self-aware till you self-reflect. And when you can
That's
self-reflect,
it.
self-coach. When you self-coach, you can self-aware. So when you can coach yourself, then you can coach others, and you've almost got the ticket. It's not the accreditation or certification. It's like it's like when you say to your kids, it's like, don't do as I do, do as I say.
Yeah.
Well, that's hypocritical leadership. So what you
Mm.
got to do is you've got to be the example, set the example. We can talk about on-field and off-field, but if you're having a bunch of beers with your team, and then you have to have a serious conversation with the next day about performance, you confuse them. So,
Totally.
this is about the boundaries that put into place. And I mean, there's so much more we can talk about, but it's like learn to lead yourself
Mm.
and have high standards for yourself, and then you can hold others to the standards. Otherwise, you don't have the credibility to do that. So you got to learn to lead yourself first.
You do. You do. And one of the things, as you were talking about that, I'm thinking the number of leaders that I work with, whether it be sales or non-sales leaders, and
Yeah.
I ask them the direct question, how often do you spend time sitting down per week reflecting? And you know
So
what?
good.
Most of them say, I don't have time to do
I
that.
don't have time to reflect. Well, if you haven't got time to reflect and you can't measure it, how the hell are you going to manage it? And I know it's cliche, but it's like if you're not starting to reflect on your performance. So often, great question. I go to them, in footy teams, male or female footy teams, stop on a Monday morning. They watch the tapes, they watch the
Yeah,
video, they watch the game, and they dissect the game. Why do you think they do that? They do that because they want to get better and they want to be the best.
that's
So
it.
I really love sport. I love athletics and athletes and everything else because there's so many connections with sales because we both keep a score, right? We like to win.
Yeah,
And it doesn't matter if they win or they lose or they draw. They force the reflection on Monday morning and go, right, you see that channel play or that D, we didn't do it right, everything else. So it's a great question to ask is when do you stop to reflect?
mm,
And the problem is they're on this treadmill
yeah,
and you've got to force reflection. And sometimes it takes someone like you to say, right, hey, Jimmy, we got a call. How was this week? What are the things that
mm,
went well? What are the things that didn't go so well? What's the one thing we're going to work on the next week? So
that's
everyone
it.
needs someone Because the thing is, it's really, really hard to observe yourself. It's kind of weird. You've got to like get out of an out of body experience, and
That's
unless you've got
right.
video or you're in a hospital bed and you've got the camera looking on you, thinking, you're going in the white space. It's really, really hard to observe yourself. So that's why you need good coaches around you. So even at
Totally.
the top, even managers need coaches. So a manager should have a manager, and a manager should have a manager. You've always got someone.
And the funny thing about that, St. John, is if the leader doesn't actually take the time to reflect on their own performance, there's 100% guarantee that none of their team's going to do that
You
either.
got it. Because monkey sees, monkey does. Right? So it's like, yeah, I want you guys to get really, really good, and I want you to really focus on your training and extracurricular, and I want you to like, and your time management's really, really poor. And then they turn up for meetings late, or they cancel the one-on-ones, or their
Mm,
diary's an absolute shambles, or they haven't got the agenda right. It's like, well, you got to be, without being all Gandhi-like, you got to be the change that you want to see.
totally.
So it's like lead by example by leading yourself first. Have
Mm,
high standards and then be unapologetic about this standard and say that's the standard I'm setting.
yeah.
Because I'm sorry, I'm going to go all Kiwi here. Steve Hansen, our ex All Blacks coach, had a beautiful quote, two quotes in fact, because he was very laconic, very succinct. He was an ex-copper. He said, "The standards you walk past are the standards you accept."
Yeah.
And then the other thing he said, and it's very sexist, but he was obviously talking about the male team because that's who he coached. He said, "If you can't change the man, change the man."
Yeah.
So he had it right. So he had leaders around him. He had people that mentored him. He had Wayne Smith. He had Graham Henry. He had these people around him as leadership coach. Your leader, you can't do it all on your own.
Mm. No, you can't. You can't. And it's so right what you've been talking about. You've got to be able to surround yourself with good people and as much as you possibly can, people who are better than you. Now, that may not
100%.
necessarily mean you're going to have better people in your sales team than you, although it maybe it does. But how do you continue to create an environment where you're challenging yourself to get better?
Yeah. So it's like a game of squash or tennis or golf. You've got to be playing with better players.
Mm.
Your game doesn't get better until you play with better players. So
Yeah.
what's happened is we talked about it earlier with no names being mentioned. Bosses don't hire A players because they think the A players are going to surpass them and make them look stupid, which is
Yes.
down to their self-worth and status, significance, and social standing and all those kind of human behaviors. What happens is you shouldn't be threatened. You should be a steward. So what you got
Mm.
to do is get the right people in and leave the legacy. A leader creates more leaders. They leave a
Yes.
legacy by bringing on A players who become A plus players under their tutelage, and then you've done your job. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, a leader's job is to lead a legacy. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Mate, I got my first leadership role. I was an individual contributor within a sales team. This was back in Optus. And the
Mm,
next day, I was the sales manager of that sales team. It took me 2 years to get that role, so there was a lot of work that had to be done. But I'll never ever forget my very first sales general manager sat me down on the first morning of my first day in the official role, and he said two things. One, welcome to the bottom rung of the ladder.
mm.
Number two is who was your likely successor? Now,
Oh,
that was
wow.
that was
First
literally
day,
on the first
first
morning
morning.
of the first day.
Wow.
Now,
Boy, he
I've
framed it right, didn't he?
never ever forgotten that because what he was telling me, Sinjin, was, hey, this is not about you. Your role is to get yourself into a position where your team is going to be sustainably successful. They don't need you, which means, though, you've got to
Correct.
find people who can take the
Yeah.
team forward. And so I'd never ever forgotten that. And what I say to sales teams today is, hey, guys, your ultimate role is to make your role redundant.
Yeah. And that scares someone though. That scares some
It
of them
does.
because they're like, yeah, but I've finally got this juicy role and I don't want to sit out my throne and I don't have to go on the front line and drive up driveways anymore or hit on stores and everything else and do my calling. But I think you got to lead by allowing. You got to lead
Mm,
by allowing. So leadership comes from the back, not from the front.
yes.
So what you got to do is you got to teach them, mentor and coach them. And I think we need to work coaching versus managing is you don't give them the answer, you ask them and you surface their comprehension, their level of understanding, or you're going to create an ongoing dependency and you're going to bitch,
Yes.
moan, and whinge about your team not being able to think for themselves, but you're not helping them think for themselves. Because when you give
Yeah.
them the answer, it's like a good teacher, Socratic
Mm,
selling. You know this stuff. Like you don't give them the answer, you ask them the question so you can work it out for themselves so they can own
correct.
it cognitively.
Yeah.
So yeah, leaders and managers have to be coaches. And good coaches ask, they don't tell.
So, Sinchin, why do you think that in 2026 there are so many organizations, and I won't just limit this to the big organizations because I see mid-tier organizations doing this as well.
Yep.
Why do you think that people in sales management or sales leadership roles are not coaching?
They say they don't have time. I say if you don't have time to coach your team, you probably need to find a new job.
Mm,
Your job is to serve your team, and it's not to sell, it's to enable your team to sell. So you obviously then make target as a team.
yeah.
I think the reason they don't do this, they have maybe sometimes the best intent. They might have some capability, but they usually don't have the capacity. And the problem is they're trying to do too many things. We load up
Mm,
our sales managers, our sales leaders. They're like the de facto marketing person, customer
yeah.
service, operations, finance, and they get pulled in all these different directions. I would love to coach my team, but I don't have time to. And I said it's a non-negotiable, it's a mandatory. So you know how you asked your question about when do you stop to reflect? How many hours do you
Mm,
spend a week reflecting? The question I asked my rural sales guys, my tribe, is when was your last coaching conversation with one of your sales team?
yeah.
And I said, show me your diary because your
Yeah.
diary is your single source of truth. So if I want to know something about you, if I could look at your bank balance, great. But if you don't want to share your bank balance, which could be good, could be bad, whatever, show me your diary.
Yeah.
So basically, if it's not in the diary, it doesn't exist. So, oh yeah,
Mm,
and I'm a great coach, but you don't coach your team. It's like me saying I'm a great parent and I love my kids, but then I spend 2 days on the golf course at the weekend. So it's like Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, the Scottish guy that went over to America,
mm,
Carnegie Hall in New York, and he says he had a great quote, and he says, "I do not watch what men say. I do not listen to what men say. I watch what they do."
yeah.
So basically, what you do tells me what your priorities are. So where you spend your time and where you spend your money, I can work out who you are. If I look at what you do and where you spend your time and who your friends are, I can tell you what your life looks like. So yeah.
And that comes back to what the quote you shared before in terms of the standard that you walk past is the standard that you set. So if as
Correct.
a sales leader, we are talking a good game in terms of I'm a great coach and I do that,
Yeah.
but people notice that you're actually not coaching and you're not coaching me, then you're talking a game, which
Talking
means your
it, but
level
not
of
walking it.
credibility starts to reduce.
Yeah, you're not a leader because the
No.
thing is, what you did is the standards you walk past are the standards you accept. If you compromise on your standards, people call them values and everything else. I call them sometimes agreements. We have an
Mm,
agreement. It's like when I say we need to honor the investment. That is
yeah.
an agreement. And do you feel your current behavior is honoring that agreement? So that's why we use agreement versus
Yeah.
expectations, which is a bit
Yeah.
more floaty and
Yeah.
ethereal. So coming back to that question around why they don't walk the talk is you have no credibility if you ask something of your team that you're not willing to do yourself. So you ask
Mm,
your team to make the cold calls or dissect the calls or present or run the sales meeting. But if you're not doing that yourself, then you've got no credibility. I mean, a
yeah.
leader is a leader who's followed. A leader, it has to be a leader who has followers. But a
Mm,
leader isn't a leader, has no one that follows them. I mean, you need to be worth following, right? We talk about, I'm taking the Mickey here, but you were talking about this new concept, well, it's not new now, but I'm a thought leader. Oh, well, you're a thought leader, are you? And sorry, I can't pronounce my TH as much as my mother's discussed. I'm a thought leader. Well, in order to be a thought leader, in order to be followed, you need to have original thoughts.
mm,
So, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but basically, you must walk your talk. You must role model the behavior. And this is why you must lead yourself first
mm.
before you're able to lead others.
I love that. I'm just looking at the time. We're going to have another conversation because I want to delve into specifically buying psychology for you, but we're on this theme of coaching. So if you're okay,
Yeah, yeah, we'll stick
we'll
there.
keep on this, right?
Yeah,
So um people listening to this, they're probably thinking, you know what, I've done a coaching course or I've got some KPIs where I've got to sit down and have a one-on-one with my team. Um, they may not necessarily be an accredited coach,
yeah,
but for a sales leader who has, let's just say, a rural team,
yeah,
a group of salespeople, are there some key pillars or some key principles that they can keep in mind to enable them to focus on, I've got to use this as a coaching conversation?
yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is you don't need to be accredited. You don't need to be given permission to become a coach. Like I'm not an accredited rugby coach, but I've coached my kids in rugby, right? But I
Yeah.
don't have all the bats and the trials and the whistles and all the letters behind my name. So coaching is simply um, having an innate curiosity and basically a commitment to a cadence of coaching. And then
Mm,
all it is about having coaching conversations, which you and I both know about. And those coaching conversations are led by the coachee, not the coach. So what you
Mm.
do is you give them the framework, the tools to say, hey, Darren, um, you start with positive intent. This is one of the most important things. You're like, Darren, I want to see you succeed and I want to see you go as far as you can and I want to help you get there and I want to help
Yeah.
clear the stuff. Would you be open for some coaching? Would you like
Mm.
to do that? And then, of course, if you want to be up for it, you will let me know. I go, great. So here's the link to my calendar, my Outlook. You find a time that works. Here's a sheet, fill it in. Let's talk when we do it. Now,
Yeah.
if you don't turn up and I don't see a calendar entry and I don't see the sheet, the one pager filled in, it tells me you're not coachable. You say you want to
Yes.
be coached, but you're not. So the walk versus the talk. So what I'm saying in a long-winded way is don't worry about, oh God, I've got so much on my plate already as a sales leader. Then I have to coach. Like the coachee does the work because the
Mm.
coachee's showing the accountability and the
Yeah.
buy-in to that. So for me, it's about innate curiosity, asking great questions, and committing to a cadence of coaching conversations. Those three things. So
Yeah.
curiosity, asking great questions, and committing to a cadence of coaching conversations. Those coaching conversations are a absolute mandatory. You don't reschedule them, you don't cancel them unless something's crazy, God forbid, happen to your family. You are there for them because then
Mm.
they know they can rely on you. And they want
Yeah.
that dependency, but they, not dependency, they want that reliability, but most importantly, they want that predictability.
Mm.
They need to know that you're going to be there for them, just like a child, that you
Yeah.
will be there for them when it's tough, when it's not. They might need a shoulder cry. They might say, I'm having a real shit of a week. I'm just getting absolutely no decisions, status quo on my serum. It's horrible. And what you do is you say, hey, look, I remember that. I've been there. And what I do is I just keep going. I keep
Yeah.
building the dam. So don't worry, you're going to have a dry patch and we'll get through it. I'll tell you about my dry patch. This is what happened. These are some of the tools I use to get through. And I just up my prospecting. I got my run rate up. And then I work through my existing customer base. So I use Power BI and gap analysis. What tools do you think you could look at? What are things we
Mm.
work on in the next month?
Yeah.
That's how you have a coaching conversation. Set up positive intent. I want to see you succeed. I want to see you sharing the financial rewards of that. Would you be open to some coaching? If they are, coach them. If they're not, don't feed them. Right? We don't feed we only feed the hungry here, Darren.
Well, and the other thing about that, St. John, is that, and I heard John Maxwell talk a lot about this, is you've got to make your time precious. So you want
Yeah,
to spend and invest your time with the people who are invested in themselves, who can not
absolutely.
only value their time but also value your time.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
so why do you think then? Because I've got some colleagues who run a great organization of Growth Matters International, and they've done a lot of research around the world around sales coaching, and they've realized that sales coaching of their sales reps is the
Yep.
number one driver of high performance. And yet, it is the first thing that's either rescheduled or cancelled.
Isn't it ironic? The single biggest, highest income impact activity of a business is sales. You and I know that.
Yeah.
Like I always say to my students, sales solves all problems.
Yes.
Like you can sort out onboarding, and everyone's obsessed. Any marketers listening, you're going to hate me. I do love you because I used to be a marketer myself. We're obsessed about customer experience, but you don't get a customer experience until you have a good sales experience. So
Yes.
forget customer experience because you've got to get a good sales experience first. Now back to your point around the number one driver of income is coaching your sales team. If we took that further and did a slice down, the number one driver of coaching your sales team is listening to their sales calls.
Yes.
And how many sales leaders listen to their rep sales? They don't have time. They don't even have time to coach them, let alone listen to a 30-minute, 40-minute, 20-minute, 15-minute call and go, hey, did you check for priority and urgency? Did you build business case? And guess what? If you were my student and you said, hey, Sinjin, I've listened to my call and these are the things I pointed out, I'd go, good for you. You're having a promotion because you're showing me that you're hungry
Mm.
and you're worthy of being coached. Sales managers and sales leaders that are listening to this only coach the coachable. First
Mm.
question I ask people, are they coachable? If they're
Yeah.
not coachable, I don't want to coach them. We talk about coaching the coalition of the willing, or what we
Hmm.
call feed the hungry. Your
Yeah.
job isn't to develop appetite, it's to feed appetite.
Mm.
You are not a endless, as Maxwell says, an endless, finite, infinite resource for your sales team. You work with the ones that want to do the work. And if they're not, forget them and coach them up or out your business or give them to
Yeah.
your competition.
And that might sound harsh, but what we're saying there is you've got to make yourself almost like a finite resource that
Music.
I'm gonna give you as much as I can possibly give you and then more,
Yeah,
but you've got to actually give yourself more, and this is where the
yeah,
self-leadership comes in.
yeah,
How much pride do you have? How much desire do you have? How much do you want to improve and do you want to serve your clients?
yeah. The thing I look for in people is I look for three factors. I look to see if they have hunger. So they're hungry, have they got urgency, and have they got energy?
Hmm.
Have they got hungry? Have they got urgency? And then we go deeper into A players and B players and C players and matrices and all that kind of stuff. But the number one thing I'm looking for is, are you hungry?
Yeah.
And the hunger will show up by the way you show up. So will you show up in my diary? Will you show up prepared? Will you be there on time? Have you listened to your own sales calls? Have you said, hey, I've read this book, I've signed up? Or do you pay for your own training out of your
Hmm.
own pay packet like you did or like I did? So
Yeah.
that shows me hunger. I'm going to work with the hungry, but I only feed the hungry. So if
Yeah.
you're not hungry, I ain't feeding you.
Now, this might sound like hopefully it's not a controversial question, but do you have some thoughts over how many chances do you give people? Do we
Ah,
give people the benefit of the doubt?
I give them three strikes because I don't know what's
Okay.
happening in their life. I have a three strike rule. First time, we're all humans. Second time, it's a theme. Third time, it's unforgivable.
Yeah.
So basically, you can mess up first time. Oh, sorry, I got the dates wrong. I forgot my diary. Okay, cool. Benefit of the doubt, you've got something going on or whatever. We're all human. We'll have compassion for that. Second time, I'm spotting a pattern here. Same problem, same excuse. Theme. Third one, it's a no. So it's a bit like people. If they don't pay me on time, we let it go the first time. They don't pay us the second time on time. We have a theme. And the third time, well, there is no third time
Yeah.
because we're not working with you.
Yeah.
So I always say you get the teams you tolerate,
Yes.
get the teams you tolerate. And also,
Yeah.
I could say that, managers multiply. So you can say with that, you get the managers you tolerate as well. So you've got to have high standards, right?
Hmm.
And if they're not willing to do the work and they're not willing to turn up, then why should you be invested in them? And it's not mercenary. It's just you don't have infinite time. You're not an infinite resource. You've got too much on your plate as it is. Do you know the 80/20 rule?
Hmm.
You've done this in your own career, same with me, when we run sales teams, is out of that team of 10, let's keep the math simple, there's one or two that absolutely smash it out of the park and make all the sales for the rest of them.
Yeah.
And there'd be old Sammy, and Sammy literally sells 10 tractors a month versus Paul or Bill or Bob who only sell one. Who am I going to spend more time with? Now everyone's going, oh, St. John, you're so they're so hard of you. Well, the thing is, if Bob or Bill at the bottom that sell one tractor are coachable, I will make time for them.
Yeah.
And Sammy, I'm going to make time for him because he's my rock star. But he better not
Hmm.
hold me to ransom. So what I do is I keep tension in the middle and create magic in the middle and say, right, if you're at the bottom, there's a reason we either get you up or we get you out. If you're in the middle, we want you to put tension on the top. So,
Yeah.
and I'm jumping around for your listeners here, but you see the segment? The
No,
bottom is your bottom
that-
feeders, unless they're
yeah.
new and they've got potential to coachable. We get them into the middle, magic in the middle, and the magic middle puts tension on the top. So Sammy doesn't hold my you know what's to ransom or
Yeah.
yours or whoever's. So we're constantly creating co-tension points in the team where people, if they're not performing, don't worry, we've got succession coming through. Don't worry, Sammy. If you want to go and
Hmm.
have your book and have a pack a salve and do a bottom lip and say, oh, I'm going to the competition, they're going to pay me 30 grand more. No worries, Sammy, off you go. We've got Emma coming through and Emma will take
Yeah.
your patch.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
that's the thing. As you were talking, I want people to get this because there's a lot of organizations that do have that Pareto principle playing out,
Mm.
but they're forcing the sales leaders to spend more time on the 80% that are generating the 20% of the results.
Hallelujah. So Southwest Airlines did this study and they had their customer ratings from 1 to 10. And they were focused on the 3, 4, and 5 rating customers who hardly
Hmm.
ever flew with them. What they did is they focused on the 7 and 8 to make the 7, 8, and 9 and 10
Yeah,
magic in the middle. Now, what
that's
happens
it.
is often everyone goes, oh, but we're training Darren or St. John. We want to train everyone. I said, I don't want to train everyone. I want to train the people who want to be trained. So
Yeah,
what we're going to do is we're going to have an application process and we're going to choose them as much as they're choosing us. So training is signaled then that it's earned, it's not entitled, and therefore there's only so many berths and only spots. And if you're not a good student, we're going to flick you out. And I have done this. You're not turning up to training. Out you go, and in comes Emma or
yeah.
Sue or Dave or Bill or Bob or whoever their names are. So it's really important. Again, you get the teams you tolerate. So set it up correctly from the start. Frame it up. Training or coaching is earned. It's not entitled. I can't train everyone. I can't coach everyone. Is that going to be you? Here's my
Hmm.
diary. Here's the coaching sheet. If you want to do it, let's do it. If not, sorry, my level of care is more than yours. I've stopped caring.
Love it, love it. Because not only is that the law of scarcity from Cialdini, I also want to make sure that just don't misunderstand what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the fact we don't care. We
No,
actually do care
we
deeply,
really care.
but we're only going to serve the people who want to be served, who are committed to improving their craft.
We need to be selfish to be selfless.
That's it.
So the thing is, what we've got to do is you're talking about with the teams. Everyone goes, yeah, but St. John, we've got to train the guys at the bottom. The reason they're at the bottom, unless they're new, there's a reason at the bottom. And if they've been at the bottom for 2 or 3 years, now high performing, high velocity sales organizations, you know this, Darren,
Mm.
they will change those sales guys within 3 months.
Yeah,
Low performing will take 18 months. That's the research. So they
yeah,
take 3 months versus 18 months to change a low performer. You get the teams you tolerate. So if you're
yeah.
spending your time on low performers, if Southwest Airlines spent all the time on one or two customers, one, two, or three rating customers, instead of seven, eight, they wouldn't have the business they have now. So focus on those that are worthy of being focused on. Don't worry about the bottom. Unless they're new, coach them up or out. And if they don't want to be coached, they shouldn't be on your team.
I love it. Love it. Mate, we're gonna have to do a part two because I want to get into so much more. I know you've got a coaching call to get to. Um, for people listening to this, there's only been a sort of a Reader's Digest version today, but we will do an extended version. The people want to learn more about you, get access to your material, your book, and also access to your podcast. Where's the best
Sure.
place to do that?
Look, the best place to go is ruralsalessuccess.com. Make sure you spell that correctly. I can't even pronounce it correctly. Rural Sales Success, all one word.com.
Yeah,
In there is access to the books, access to the podcast, which is called the Rural Sales Show. You can get that on Apple, Spotify, plus a bunch of other resources and emails and all that stuff. So have a gander on that and a graze on that. Take what you want, binge on that. And if you want to connect with me, then LinkedIn's the best place to do that. And there's not many St. John Craners, so you'll find me easily. Thank
you
goodness there
say
aren't.
you're at the top of the list, mate.
No, well, for a weird name like mine, I am. But maybe my parents branded me at birth. I'm not sure.
Awesome. I'll put all those on the show notes. If there was one last piece of advice you want to leave people with, um, to maybe give them a bit of a faster start to 2026, what
Sure.
would that be?
Consistency.
Hmm.
That's it. That's it. Don't underestimate consistency. Consistency in your own life, with your reading, with your exercising, with your coaching. Be consistent.
It
I've been
compounds.
consistent. I'm sure you have. You've done this wonderful podcast for a really, really long time. You've been doing it for what, 6 years, I
Yeah,
think?
yeah,
That takes consistency. Writing a weekly email takes consistency. So being consistent, consistency compounds. And so don't have intensity, have consistency, and you'll be
yeah,
amazed how far you go with consistency. I think it's such an underrated skill. So just be consistent.
mate. Are we brothers from long lost parents?
You could be
Because
brothers from another mother.
it sounds like I'm talking. It's your words because that's what I say. It's just be consistent, right? Because it may not sound sexy, but man, it compounds.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you don't need to be James Clear, you don't need to be Darren Mitchell. It's just when you're going to commit to something, commit to it and do it to the best of your ability and be consistent about it. So consistently show up for yourself,
Yeah,
consistently show up for your team and do the work. And the other thing is do the work even when you don't feel like doing it.
that's it.
And you'll be
That is it.
amazed where you can get to.
That is it, mate. Absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I will. Let's organise a second one.
Love
But
to.
thanks so much. Been an awesome conversation, and you got to get to your coaching call.
Yeah, and well done, Darren. Want to congratulate you on doing 6 years of podcast. I know how hard that is and how selfless that is. Well, it's a very, very generous thing you do. I've loved having you on the show and hope we've rewarded you listeners, hopefully, with their time.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.